Say it is a new product. I am launching a new product, and this new product which I launched, when my workers produced this product for the very first time when my employees manufacture this product, then that first unit that they produced took 10 hours to produce. The first unit that my workers produced, it took them 10 hours to finish that production. Now when they produce a second unit of the same product, is it necessary they will take again another 10 hours? No, because first time when you make a new kind of product, you might be going slow because it is the first time you're making that product. You don't have any experience, you are still learning, right? But now when you make that same product second time, if you make the same product again second time, then you have a little experience, you have learned from your first experience, due to which you might be able to finish that production in a lesser time. Yeah, let's say now the time taken turns out to be 8 hours. Likewise, every time as you increase your units of production, then the hours per unit keeps on decreasing. This concept is called as the concept about learning. Yeah, this concept is the concept about learning. It is like when you revise my subject, when you learn this costing subject for the very first time when you study this subject, it might take you around 130 to 150 hours while watching the classes and doing some self study and all, right? So class time plus the self study time, it might take you say approximately 200 hours to learn the full subject. But when you revise that same subject second time, don't you think you might be able to revise that subject, say maybe in just 100 hours, half the time? Second revision when you do, after that first revision, second revision when you do, you might be able to revise that in just 50 hours. And then the third revision which you do, say you do a revision on the day before the exam, final day revision, that final day revision of the entire syllabus, you might be able to do that in just 15 hours. I have my revision videos on YouTube. Just for the November exam, I had launched the revision videos. It is around 14 hours full syllabus revision. Absolutely all concepts covered, but in a fast paced marathon revision. Yeah. So every time you repeat that syllabus, you might take lesser and lesser time to finish that job. That is called as the effect of learning. Same way, for goods manufacturing also, the companies, the employees will experience learning effect. Of course, this will happen only in case of new products. If the product is already old and established product, then they will not keep saving time in every unit. You save time for the production of first unit, then second unit, then third unit. So for the initial few units, you keep saving time. Thereafter, later will come a time when the time saved will not happen, then your hours per unit will become consistent. But that's why I take example that this is a new product. Now, this is my concept of learning, and it is measured by using a statistical method called learning curve, and it is measured in terms of a rate called as the learning rate. Now, to understand that rate of learning, let me clarify that the hours per unit that I have written is not actually hours per unit. This is average hours per unit. So when one unit is manufactured, then the average time is 10 per unit. But if two units are manufactured, then average time is 8 hours per unit. Does this mean that the second unit was produced in just 8 hours? No. This doesn't mean that second unit was produced in 8 hours. No, it means that the average time for producing total 2 units is 8 hours per unit. If I want to know the time taken for only second unit, then what to do? Well, if I want to know the time taken for only the second unit, then I need to calculate, say, total time here. For producing one unit, if the average time is 10 hours, so the total time of producing one unit is 10 hours. If average time for producing 2 units is 8 hours per unit, on an average 8 hours are required per unit for 2 units. So 2 into 8, total time required will become total time is 2 into 8, 16 hours. Now you see that if the total time needed for one unit was 10 hours, the total time required for 2 units is 16 hours. So how much time was required to make only that second unit? Well, the time for the second unit is this difference. So the time required for second unit is just 6 hours. This is called as your effect of learning. So to measure this effect of learning, we are going to analyze this average hours per unit, and that is analyzed in terms of a rate called learning rate. Now it is important to understand what does that learning rate indicate. This is measured in terms of learning rate. And what does that learning rate indicate? Let's say learning rate of 80%, for example, means that every time when units become double, then average time per unit becomes 80% of previous. Please note that this applies to average time per unit of all these units. It does not apply to every next unit. So if the learning rate is 80%, let's say in this new product, the learning rate is 80%. What does it mean? If the learning rate is 80%, it means that every time the units become double, then the average hours per unit will become 80% of previous. Like over here, when the units become double into 2, then the average hours per unit will become 80% of previous average hours per unit. Right? Similarly, again, when the units become double, let's say from 2, if it becomes double, that makes it 4. Then the average hours will again become 80% of previous. 80% of 8 is 6.4. Every time when units become double, then average hours will become 80% of previous. So from 4, if it becomes double, means 8, then average hours will become 80% of previous. So 6.4 into 80% is 5.12. And so on. This rate of 80% is called as the learning rate. In short, the concept of learning, the effect of learning is measured in terms of such learning rate. Now, do you think that as you keep increasing the units, the average hours will keep getting lesser and lesser? Will you keep enjoying the effect of learning like forever, lifetime? No, you will keep enjoying the effect of learning until that product is still a new product. The moment it becomes an old and established product, meaning after certain number of units, after let's say certain number of units, thereafter there will not be any further effect of learning. The learning effect will stop a certain number of units. Let's say, for example, the learning effect stops after, let's say, for example, that the learning effect shall stop after, say, 15 units. This means, say, the learning stops at 15 units, meaning until your production reaches 15, until that time your average hours per unit will keep on decreasing. Every next unit will take lesser time because of experience. But after 15 units, whatever you produce, after 15 units you produce the 16th unit, 17th unit, and so on. Every unit that you produce after this, let's say up to 25 units, Whatever production you now do, all these units will require how much time? All these units, the time taken will be equal to the time of 15th unit. It will be equal to the time of the 15th unit, not equal to the average hours of 15 units. It will be equal to the time for the 15th unit. See, just like average hours of 2 units is 8, but the time for the second unit is just 6 hours. Same way, average hours of 15 units can be something here, but the time required for that last 15th unit has to be identified with some workings. Anyways, so when the learning stops at 15 units, so after 15 units, there is no further savings in time. Whatever time you took for 15th unit, now that becomes consistent. This is generally how the concept of learning works. This is how the question of learning curves will be given to you. Now, you might be wondering that we can identify average hours for every time when units become double. Now, after 8 units, double is 16. But I want to identify the average hours of 15 units. Say I also want to identify the average hours of 14 units. So if I want to find the average hours of any number of units which is not in this sequence of double double double, then how to find? Well, then I need a formula. Well, yes, there is a formula also. Next we'll learn that formula. I'm not getting into the derivation of the formula because derivation is pure statistics, pure mathematics, and I'm not sure whether how good you are at mathematics, but anyways, I will directly give you the formula. For the formula purpose, for the purpose of formula, the number of units is x and the average hours per unit is y. And your formula here is that y equals to a into x raised to b. The y value will always be equal to a into x raised to b. If these are your x values, these are your y values, y is equal to a into x to the power b. Naturally, we need to know that what is a value, what is b value. A value is the time taken for the very first unit. This first unit, 10 hours time taken, is called as a value. As simple as that. So a value is the time taken for the first unit. And b value is called as the learning coefficient. B value is called the learning coefficient, and generally that learning coefficient will be given in the question. So you don't need to worry about it. Learning coefficient is always given in the question. In case it is not given, by chance, in case it is not given, then your B value is basically log of learning rate divided by log 2. This is the working. This is from mathematics, from statistics. I told you I'm not getting into derivation of that, but this is basically your b value, but you don't need to worry about this. This will be mostly given in every question. Now that you will be given a value and the b value, you put that a over here, b over here, and if you wish to find the average hours for 15 units, take x equals to 15. If you wish to find average hours for 14 units, take x equals to 14. We will practice one such question later here. Yeah, but this is basically your concept about learning. This is the formula to identify the average hours when the company is experiencing learning. Also, if I want to find the time taken for the 15th unit, then for that matter, I need two things. To find the time taken of 15th unit, I need to identify the total time of 15 units. I need to find the total time of 14 units, and then the difference of these two will be called as my time for 15th unit. Just like the difference of this first two, 6 hours was the time for second unit. Same way, you find the total time of 15 units, you find the total time for 14 units. Difference indicates the time that I took for that last 15th unit. This is my effect of learning. This is my concept about learning. Done?